This is our Remarkable Leaders Learn Continually. We were assigned chapter 4 to look at. In this group, it would be Leah Spears, Mary Beth Tate, Sierra Williams, and Jarrett Hatcher. On the screen now, you can see the agenda for this meeting, and these topics will be covered throughout our PowerPoint presentation. The first thing that we looked at in this chapter was the importance of leaders learning. And our first point is that leadership is complex. That's one reason why leaders need to continue to learn. Leading is not easy. Times change. The people and the situations that surround the leader change. Roles change. And one note that I wrote down is that not only as a leader do we have to worry about leading those around us, but also we have personal struggles as well that we have to look at and lean upon and be able to manage. So leadership is a complex task. The expectation still remains the same, though. A leader has to continue to have a positive impact and to be efficient. And this can only take place if a leader continues to grow. The second point would be status quo requires no leadership. A business or a team or a teacher can kind of keep things remaining the same without good leadership, and actually go a step farther and say that if you don't have good leadership, then your group or your team can actually take steps back and allow either other people to pass you or things to kind of fall apart and you become less efficient. And leaders must grow before they can grow those around them. And another note I wrote on that was, as the conditions change, then learning is required to be able to adapt and work within those changing conditions. The third point is we become better and our jobs become easier when we learn. Through learning, a leader can improve upon him or herself through knowledge and other experiences. The job is never easy, but we become more equipped to lead through our learning and through experiences and through the knowledge that we gain. The fourth point is that as a leader, we must model it for others. People are more likely to follow someone that is willing to put in the same time and energy that they're asking those around them to put in. Leaders must be seen and not just heard. I've had experiences in the past when I've worked with a leader or a boss who all they did was want to manage, and it makes things a lot more difficult. The lines of communication are typically closed and things like that. So when you have a leader who is willing to work alongside those that they're leading, then things seem to be a little bit more seamless and more efficient. And then the final point would be better leaders usually mean being better humans. And then I put on the last point up here is that leaders become remarkable through learning as well. Next slide, please. One way that leaders learn and continue to grow through their experiences is through what is called the learning cycle. During this learning cycle, the first thing is that as a leader or as a person in general is that you have an experience of some sort. That can be in the classroom when you teach a lesson, maybe give a project to a group project or something like that. As a boss, maybe you're putting something in that you want your employees to do, but some type of experience has to be that you have to go through. Once you have that experience, you want to reflect upon that experience. You want to think about what are some things that went well, what are some things that didn't go well. Because the things that did go well, typically you want to keep putting those into practice, and things that don't, you want to alter it. The third point would be to generalize from the experience. That kind of takes it a step farther. If I sit there and I had an experience, I'm like, oh, well, this didn't work with this group. Maybe it worked with this group. I look at those. I kind of give myself feedback. I can get feedback from others. And so I try to take that feedback and I try to mold it into some sort of action. And then the last step is to actually put that into action. And like I said, if it's something that works, you would like to keep doing that, kind of build upon it. And if it didn't, try something new, try to tweak it a little bit. Sometimes they're small tweaks. Sometimes it's, oh, this didn't work at all. Let's get rid of it and try something else. So the learning cycle is a good way to reflect upon the things that you try and gain extra experience and knowledge and be able to continue your learning as a leader. Next slide, please. And for this activity, one thing that goes with the learning cycle that you can do that I've done in the past and to think about now is that it's called the feedback board. It can be a physical board. It can be an electronic board. I like to do physical boards because um, it's very easily accessed or whatever. And on that feedback board, pose a question or a situation or experience. So think about if you're in a classroom and you're wanting to maybe get some feedback on a lesson that you taught. Put a question on the board, and then give your students a chance to come in and give you some feedback on that. What I've done in the past is I've taken sticky notes. So you could take a sticky note or something, have a kid put an answer to that question. Maybe it's, do you understand the material that's taught? Or what is something you liked about the lesson? What is something you didn't? What is something that you found difficult? What are some improvements that could be made? And so give students or those people around you a chance to give you feedback and responses. And like I said, I like to make it anonymous because they seem to be more honest whenever you make it anonymous. And then there's no reason to do this if you don't go back and look at it, discuss it with the people around you, and things like that. So one thing I would do is pose the question or whatever, give it a couple days, and then read some comments. Of course, you want to read the comments before you have that big group discussion, but kind of look over them and then talk about it with those that are around you and give them a chance to put in their feedback and reflect upon that experience. Next slide, please.
All right, now we're going to move on to the learning mindset. So the first learning mindset is the beginning mindset. I like to think of the beginning mindset as growth mindset, always willing to learn something new. The difference between knowing what you are doing versus assuming you have or need all the answers. As a leader, you're supposed to know a lot, but you're not supposed to know everything. The remarkable leaders know they don't have all the answers. And so there's phrases like, I better know what I'm doing, is a mindset we must get rid of if we want to have a learning mindset. So here's three beginner mindset characteristics that I pulled from the remarkable leader, which is being secure enough to say, I don't know, which is okay. Willing to ask for help and actively seeking out experts as resources, and beginning to recognize beginner mindset learners recognize that there is always more to learn about learning. Our second portion of the learning mindset is being self-aware. Be aware of the learning process. Consider your biases, your prejudges, or being prejudiced of a situation, your beliefs about a topic you're learning about. Notice your reactions to the situation and understanding why you respond the way you do. And being self aware and understanding provides necessary preparation for your success. Next slide, please. All right, so now we're going to do an activity. I want you to get out paper and pencil or a pen. And first, think about something you need to get better at. If you need to close your eyes, take a minute. Now, write 2 or 3 reasons this will benefit you. Why do you need to get better at this? Give you a couple minutes to work on that. All right, and we're gonna put that to the side. So now we did a written activity. Now I want you to actually say aloud, I don't know. Say it loud and proud. But now say, I don't know, but I can find out. And these are things to remember as a leader, as a remarkable leader. that this is okay for you not to know things and for you to figure things out. Next slide, please. Now we're going to talk about curiosity. Our minds want to know the answer to certain questions, and so our minds search for the answer, which is nothing wrong with that. Our curiosity is expressed through questions we ask. Many problem-solving techniques include a step of getting to the root cause of the problem. One component of the root cause analysis is asking why. Sometimes asking why can come off the wrong way, so you have to watch how you ask why, but it's still important to ask why. There's a method known as the 5 whys. In this approach, you will continue to ask why until you no longer are asking why. At this point, you have found the root cause of the problem. All right, next slide, please.
Okay, I'll be speaking on the topic of observation as it relates to remarkable leaders and their continual learning. Eckenberry tells us that observation is a skill to employ in the learning cycle, specifically during steps 1 and 2, which Levi covered for us earlier. Observation is probably the most underused and underappreciated learning skill, and it definitely takes a willingness and practice to be a skilled observer. Major keys to observing. So there are 2 major factors that influences our ability to observe. Those are attention and filters. Attention is simply noticing the things around us, and we can do that in 2 different ways. One, by recognizing things that are familiar, like a familiar face in a crowd, and secondly, by something that surprises us or catches us off guard, like being at a black tie fair and someone shows up in a colorful costume that would draw our attention because that was unexpected and surprising. Filters are basically how we see the things that we see. It's like our perspective. 2 people can be looking at the exact same movie, same event, same picture, but have 2 different ideas about what they just seen and 2 different perspectives of it. And this can be based on different things, such as your past experiences, your thoughts, your ideas, things you value, your beliefs, and things of that nature. It is likely that we see things as we are, as opposed to how they actually are. Another thing that affects the way we observe is the reticular activating system, and this combines both attention and filters when it comes to observation. This is our brain's way of helping us understand the things that are happening around us. So it's also known as the brain's filtering system, and it keeps us from sensory overload, like the light being too bright, being too sensitive to touch, maybe being too emotional, things like that. I will compare the reticular activating system to like a sorting system in which things we may believe are more important are brought to the forefront of our mind. So we see them more, or we observe those more, or we pay more attention to them. So now we're looking at what to observe. We have to consider what to observe, and those 4 components are content, process, more than what we see, and being in the moment. Content is our source of learning. It is basically the way we look at a situation or a task, or what is being experienced or what is being said. Now, with process, you're going to be looking beyond what is being said, and you start paying more attention to the behaviors of people, body languages, or the reactions of others. This is a skill of highly effective observers because it goes beyond just simply the content. And then more than what we see is similar to process. You're seeing what's going on with what your eyes are telling you. However, you take into account other senses as well as your own intuition or how you feel about things. And then finally, being in the moment So the next time you're probably faced with a situation in which you're trying to observe, you're probably going to try to use all three of the first three components. And so that's highly likely that you'll do that. However, it must be understood that it's more important to be present in the moment and aware of what you're experiencing at that time. So, for example, you don't want to be so focused on your own observation that you're unaware of the needs of others around you. If you're giving a demonstration or teaching a new skill, you don't want to be so focused on what you're trying to show and how you're doing it, as opposed to if the spectators or the people you're teaching are watching, following you, or truly understanding what's going on.
So one of the things that makes us remarkable leaders is when we reflect. And Jarrett mentioned this earlier in his introduction, but we need to look at different ways to reflect. We need to think about what happened, both the process of the meeting or the event and the end result. How do we feel about it? Why did it happen the way it did, and what contributed to those results? How does this remind me of other situations? And what will I do differently in the future based on these answers? And this makes me think of something that happened just this past week. I was presiding over a meeting. One of my members was extremely quiet. She is never quiet. So I was reflecting both the good and the bad of the meeting to try to figure out what was causing her to be so quiet. Is it something I need to follow up with her? Is it something I need to talk to other members about? So when we reflect on both the good that happened in the situation and the bad on the situation. If it's something that went well, we want to repeat that. If it's something that didn't go well, we want to change that so that we don't repeat that. Next slide, please. So I have a little activity to infuse some more fun into our leadership process. And I want you to think about the last mistake that you made, or the last big mistake that you made. I'll give you just a second to do that. And then I want you to think about the humor in it, the silliness in it. What happened because of that? Did you learn something about yourself? Did you learn it's that something you never want to repeat again? We can, even when things go bad, we can find humor in them, and we can learn a lesson from it and figure out how not to repeat that. Next slide, please. So why does it matter to add more fun? Because just like a lesson I'm planning for a science class for this week, when we add more fun into anything, we're more likely to remember it. We're more likely to take something away from it. So when we're learning with others, we're more likely to remember what they said if it was something funny. We can plan the fun in our lessons or our meetings. We can laugh a little bit while we're learning. We can think about how we can make things more interesting for our students or for our coworkers or our members. And when we allow more fun in, then more people are going to be able to take something away from that. Next slide, please. So final thoughts on chapter 4. Remarkable leaders are always learning, both consciously and subconsciously. So sometimes even we're in a situation and we know we're going to take something away from this, but sometimes it's subconscious, just like the example I was talking about with one of my members this week. I didn't think about it in the moment, how quiet she was. As I left the meeting, I thought about that she was super quiet. This is something I need to reflect on. So we're always learning, both consciously and subconsciously. We also have choices that we need to make in every situation. They're not always going to be the best choice, but we always have a choice that we need to make. And then we need to look at that, the choice that we made, and move on from there. And that leads me to remarkable leaders are learning in every situation. We know that as Leah said, we don't always have the answers. I'm on lots of state boards. I can constantly say to people, I don't know, but I know who to ask. And that's okay. So remarkable leaders are learning in every situation they're in. And that's one of the main thoughts of chapter 4.
And that concludes our presentation. Let's